Rain slammed against the stained glass windows of the Grant mansion as a small boy stood trembling beneath the crystal chandelier, water dripping from his second-hand suit. All eyes were on the shattered remains of a priceless cobalt vase. The child's elbow had clipped it by accident, and now it lay in pieces like his hope. Security moved toward him, the silence of the elite guests louder than a scream. His tiny voice barely rose above a whisper, but it pierced the air like thunder. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to help my mom." 10 years later, those same marble floors echoed under different footsteps. A man in a navy blazer, tall and composed, walked through the front door of the very mansion that had expelled him. This time, he wasn't a guest. He was the owner. Cut to black. Then, slow fade in. The double doors of the Grant mansion creaked open with a weight that seemed symbolic. Tommy Brooks stood in the center of the grand foyer, raindrops clinging to his shoulders like ghosts from the past. The polished marble gleamed beneath his well-worn shoes, not the ones that once squeaked across this same floor in shame, but a new pair, sharp and quiet. He inhaled deeply, letting the scent of polished wood and forgotten pride fill his lungs. It had been exactly 10 years since the day this mansion broke him. Now he had come to reclaim something far greater than real estate. Maxwell Grant didn't recognize him at first. The aging CEO was busy directing movers, his voice sharper than the broken edges of his former empire. His once imposing figure was now slightly hunched, weighed down by time and scandal. But when he looked up and locked eyes with Tommy, time froze. The clipboard in his hand dropped with a hollow clatter. "You," he muttered, eyes narrowing as realization hit. "You bought this place?" Tommy didn't answer immediately. He stepped into the foyer, his gaze sweeping across the vast space. The chandelier he had once stared at through tears still sparkled above, mocking no longer. "I didn't buy it for revenge," he said, his voice calm, clear. "I bought it because of what you taught me, Mr. Grant. That some places need new stories." Maxwell's face contorted. "This is absurd. This is my family's legacy. You think money gives you the right to rewrite history?" "No," Tommy replied, his voice dropping. "Character does." From the top of the staircase, a soft voice interrupted. "Dad," said Sophia Grant, now a poised woman in a fitted navy suit, her hair pulled back in a professional braid. "You should hear what he has to say." Her eyes flicked to Tommy, a flicker of recognition passing through her features. This was not the trembling boy in a patched-up jacket anymore. This was a man with purpose. Maxwell was about to speak again, but Tommy raised his hand and gestured to a large, dust-covered crate in the corner. "Before I tell you what's coming next, I need to show you something." They followed him into the old drawing room where the air was heavy with disuse and grandeur. Tommy pulled a small box from his bag and placed it on the mahogany table. Inside was a prototype, sleek, polished, and unmistakably powerful. "This is what I was trying to show you 10 years ago," he said, flipping a tiny switch. The lights on the device pulsed softly, drawing power from a solar strip along its base. Sophia leaned closer, her eyes wide. "This is your energy converter?" Tommy nodded. "Version 8. The first one was built from cardboard and wires I salvaged from old radios. You remember it, don't you?" He looked at Maxwell. "You had your team try to replicate it after I left." Maxwell flinched. "That's a serious accusation." "I have documentation," Tommy said evenly. "Your former R&D consultant left me the blueprints and your team's failed iterations. You tried to steal an idea from a child while throwing him out in front of the press like trash." Sophia turned sharply toward her father, her voice tight. "Is that true?" Maxwell didn't answer. The silence was damning. Tommy leaned forward slightly, eyes steady. "I didn't come here to ruin you. I came to take back what you tried to erase." The room was silent, the only sound the gentle whir of the prototype humming in the air between them. Sophia folded her arms, her voice steady but cold. "What do you plan to do with the mansion?" Tommy looked up at the vaulted ceiling, then out toward the rain-streaked windows. I'm turning it into something new. A place for kids like I was. A space for innovation, for second chances. Maxwell let out a dry laugh, one tinged with bitterness. And what? You expect me to just pack up and walk away? No, Tommy replied. I expect you to watch what happens when someone chooses to build instead of destroy. Sophia turned to her father. Maybe it's time, Dad. Maxwell didn't respond. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked old. Tommy walked toward the grand staircase, then paused. You once said people like me don't belong here. But the truth is, this place never belonged to anyone who couldn't open its doors to others. He ascended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing like a new chapter being written over the past. Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside the mansion, a storm had only just begun. 10 years earlier, the same marble floor had felt unbearably cold beneath Tommy Brooks' thin-soled shoes. He had arrived at the Grant mansion with trembling hands and a heart full of impossible hope. His project, a clunky yet functional renewable energy converter made from scraps, was all he had. That, and his mother's belief in him. Sarah Brooks had knelt beside him before he boarded the school bus that morning, her eyes tired but burning with love. You shine bright, baby, she whispered, adjusting the too short sleeves of his thrift store blazer. Even if they don't see it yet. The Grant mansion had loomed over him like a fortress. Inside, the exhibition was a blur of pristine uniforms, glossy poster boards, and whispering voices that shifted when he passed. The rich kids' parents stood by them in suits and pearls, while Tommy had come alone, his mother working a double shift at the diner. Still, he had beamed with pride when he plugged in his device and watched the small LED light glow to life. And then Sophia Grant had laughed. She was 12 then, tall, flawless, already wearing the armor of privilege. You made that out of garbage, she'd said, her voice high and sharp like crystal about to shatter. Her friends giggled behind manicured hands. What are you trying to do? How are your shoelaces? Tommy had tried to explain. About the solar panel repurposed from a broken calculator. The circuits he'd resoldered using kitchen foil and a steady hand. He had rehearsed the words, but in that moment they collapsed under the weight of humiliation. Then came the accident. One misstep. A falling vase. The sickening sound of porcelain shattering like his future. A gasp from the crowd. Maxwell Grant's furious voice slicing through the air like a whip. Do you have any idea what you've done? The shame had drowned him. As security marched him past the heavy double doors, rain started to fall, gentle at first, then relentless. He stood on the wide stone steps, soaked and shivering, watching the light from the exhibition fade behind the closing doors. He clutched his project to his chest like a lifeline, the cardboard already wilting in the rain. That night, his mother had wrapped him in a towel and held him for hours. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "We get up again. We always get up." In the weeks that followed, the ridicule spread. Sophia's comments echoed through whispered school hallways. Teachers looked away when he entered class. But Tommy didn't stop building. In their tiny apartment, between stacks of library books and borrowed tools, he started version 2. Then 3. He stopped caring about sleekness and focused on function. He studied energy flow, resistor values, battery efficiency. He taught himself calculus from a discarded college textbook and began experimenting with circuitry so advanced even local science fairs didn't know what to do with him. One afternoon, a stranger had knocked on their door. Dr. Robert Coleman, former university professor, now consultant for Grant Enterprises, had been in the room during the exhibition, silent in the crowd when Tommy was dragged out. But he had remembered the boy. He had watched the LEDs flicker. "You were the only one there solving a real-world problem," Robert said, setting his briefcase down on their worn kitchen table. "Not just competing for trophies." Tommy had stared, stunned. Sarah had offered tea with trembling hands. That was the beginning. Weekends spent in the Coleman's sunlit garage. Tommy soldering, Janet baking. Sarah learning business basics from Robert between shifts. They had formed a family born of failure and forged by purpose. By the time Tommy was 15, his prototype powered an entire floor of their apartment building for 3 days using only 8 hours of sunlight. And still, he remembered the vase. He remembered Sophia's laughter, the security guard's grip on his arm, the way Maxwell Grant had looked at him like trash beneath polished shoes. Those memories weren't fuel for hatred, but for momentum. He didn't want revenge. He wanted meaning. He started teaching younger kids in the neighborhood. Built small kits so they could assemble their own generators. Made lesson plans. When he was 17, the first grant came in, from a university startup incubator run by one of Robert's old colleagues. Tommy used it to file a provisional patent. He named the device, Phase 1. When national interest followed, Tommy formed a company. Not in Silicon Valley, but in the very neighborhood where his journey had begun. He hired local teens. He paid mothers to help build circuit boards from home. He got Sarah out of the diner. And yet, every step, he saw the Grant mansion looming. Not in bitterness, but as unfinished business. A monument not to power, but to exclusion. So when word broke that Maxwell Grant was bankrupt, that the estate was up for auction, Tommy didn't hesitate. He sat with Sarah on their balcony, rain falling soft around them like it had that day. "Should I?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Just smiled and whispered, "Only if you build something better inside it." And now, standing in that echoing drawing room with the new prototype glowing between them, Tommy knew, the circle hadn't closed. It had widened. And the real transformation was still to come. Tommy didn't expect the past to flinch. But it did. The moment he stepped into the Grant mansion again, this time as its rightful owner, he felt the walls contract slightly, as if the house remembered him. The rain outside whispered against the high glass panes, not unlike the day he had been thrown out 10 years ago. He walked slowly through the echoing corridor, past a half-unpacked sculpture and portraits that now looked less like legacies and more like ghosts. Each step drew him closer to the man who had once called security on him like a stray dog that wandered in from the storm. Maxwell Grant was seated at the end of the drawing room, hunched but still polished, signing documents while his assistant hovered nearby. His silver hair was thinner, his suit still tailored, but no longer intimidating. When he looked up and saw Tommy approaching, he froze for a full second. The recognition hit like a blunt strike to his pride. Maxwell's jaw tightened. "So it's true," he said. The boy with the trash heap turned mogul. Tommy offered a neutral nod. "I'm here to finalize the transition. My team will give you until the end of the week to complete the move." Maxwell scoffed. "So you're playing philanthropist now? Turning my home into some kind of charity zoo?" "Into a center," Tommy replied calmly, "for the very kids you used to humiliate. To prove that genius isn't defined by zip code or wardrobe." Before Maxwell could retort, another figure stepped into view, Sophia Grant. Taller now, her hair pulled back in a clean, efficient bun. She wore a sharp blazer, no longer the snide princess of the past, but something more complex. Her eyes flicked between the two men before settling on Tommy. "I heard," she said simply. "You bought it." Her voice didn't carry mockery. It was more like she was trying to gauge the depth of what she had missed all these years. Tommy didn't answer her directly. Instead, he walked to the center of the room and opened the leather folder under his arm. Inside were photocopies, dated research notes, confidential project logs from Grant Enterprises' Renewable Energy Division. He placed them on the coffee table and stepped back. Maxwell leaned forward to read. His eyes darted across the pages, then stopped. Tommy saw it, the flicker of panic beneath the surface. Because there, in black and white, was the proof. Not just stolen ideas, but memos detailing attempts to replicate a child's design. Schematics. Meeting minutes. An internal strategy note discussing how to skirt legal exposure due to the boy's lack of patent filing. You remember this? Tommy asked softly. The day you called me a disgrace and had me dragged into the rain, while your engineers upstairs tried to reverse engineer the very thing you mocked. Sophia stepped closer now, her brow furrowed. Wait, this was your invention. Tommy didn't look at her. The version your R&D team tried to commercialize under a different name 2 years later. That was mine. Maxwell stood abruptly, but age made the motion wobble. This is nothing but bitterness disguised as progress. You were a child, your idea wasn't protected. It was public domain the moment it entered my home. That's not how ethics, or the law, work, Tommy said quietly. But I'm not here to sue you. That surprised them both. You think I came back for revenge? Tommy's voice remained steady, but his eyes burned. I came back for justice. And that doesn't always wear a courtroom robe. He stepped toward the fireplace, where a porcelain vase, eerily similar to the one he had broken, sat undisturbed. The symmetry was almost too poetic. Here's what I want, Mr. Grant, Tommy said. I'm building a mentorship program. For kids like me. Poor, underestimated, full of potential. And I want you to speak to them. To own what you did. To tell them what you've learned about pride, and power, and blindness. Maxwell laughed, hollow and short. You want me to perform penance? No, Tommy said. I want you to become useful. The silence that followed was ruptured only by the soft tapping of rain. Then Sophia spoke. I'll do it, she said. Both men turned to her. You? Maxwell asked. She nodded. If you're serious about this center, about the mission, I'll help run it. I'm tired of pretending this family name means something when it hasn't for a long time. Maybe it could. Maxwell looked betrayed. You'd side with him? Sophia met her father's eyes with a calm he had never shown her. I'm siding with something real. Tommy finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. She extended her hand, not with entitlement, but with a tentative sincerity that surprised him. He shook it. As Maxwell slowly sank back into his chair, defeated and silent, the weight of old empires crumbling seemed to echo louder than the rain. And in that echo, Tommy felt something shift, not a victory, but a release. He turned to the window. Below, the city lights blinked like stars too stubborn to fade. And above them, in this mansion once guarded like a throne, a new kind of power was beginning to take root. One that didn't silence mistakes, but transformed them. 1 year later, the Grant Mansion bore little resemblance to the fortress of arrogance it had once been. The iron gates stood permanently open now, creaking only in the wind, no longer barring outsiders but welcoming them. The once pristine rose gardens had been reshaped into interactive science zones, vegetable plots, and open-air classrooms. Marble corridors once echoing with heels and hushed power plays now rang with laughter, questions, and curiosity from children who had never dreamed they'd step inside such a place. Tommy stood near the grand staircase, the same one Sophia Grant once descended in judgment. But today, he waited not for confrontation, but for a class of wide-eyed fourth graders from Central District. They arrived in school vans, many in oversized jackets and worn sneakers, not unlike the boy Tommy had once been. One child clutched a handmade project inside a shoebox, his excitement barely contained. Tommy knelt beside him and smiled. You've brought something special, haven't you? The boy nodded, nervous and proud. It's a water purifier I made from a cereal box and a bottle cap. Tommy's voice was warm and even. That's how genius starts. Inside the newly repurposed ballroom, now a lab and exhibition space, Janet Coleman, walking slowly but smiling wide, served muffins to children as they peered through microscopes. Sarah Brooks stood by the window, watching her son move among them with effortless grace. From waitress to nursing graduate, now coordinator of the center's family support wing, she had grown alongside her son's mission. Her clipboard was full, her heart fuller. In the main conference room, Sophia Grant led a workshop for teenage girls. Her hair now cut short, her makeup minimal, her tone firm but empathetic. She spoke not of inheritance or image, but of ideas, of ownership, of failing upward. No one who watched her could imagine the snobbish girl from years ago, least of all Sophia herself. And in the refurbished West Wing, where old oil paintings once glared from the walls, Dr. Robert Coleman walked slowly beside a young inventor, discussing circuit flow with the same care he once gave Tommy. His voice was quieter now, but his presence as steady as ever. A small plaque above the door read, "The Coleman Wing, in honor of lifelong mentors." That afternoon, a press delegation arrived to tour the Brooks Innovation Center. A young reporter paused beneath the ornate chandelier and turned to Tommy. "When you look around this place," she asked, "do you ever think about what it used to be?" Tommy looked up at the ceiling, at the gold leaf trim and the chandeliers that once sparkled over charity galas that excluded boys like him. He let the silence hang a moment before replying. "Every single day. That's why I changed it." Outside, under the old marble arch where he once stood soaking wet in the rain, a new sculpture had been unveiled, a child holding a circuit board in one hand and a cracked vase in the other. On the base, the inscription read, "Character is not given. It's built, shard by shard." That evening, after the last student had left, Tommy wandered through the halls alone. He passed his childhood invention, now preserved behind glass. Past photos of the first student cohort. Past the room where Maxwell once ruled and Sophia once rolled her eyes. He paused at the window and watched the city lights blink below. And beside him, a note rested on the sill, unsigned but unmistakable in handwriting, "Thank you, for showing me what this place could be. S." He smiled faintly. Not everything broken could be repaired. But some things could be transformed. Not erased, rewritten. As the center lights dimmed and the city quieted, the mansion stood not as a monument to one man's ego, but as a lighthouse for those who had always been told they were too poor, too quiet, too different to matter. For Tommy Brooks, the vase had shattered, but the dream had endured. And somewhere deep inside this house that once expelled him, a little boy's voice still echoed, not with apology, but with purpose.